It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. You're tuned into your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso, right here on S3. We continue our discussion around neighbours. Yes, now, but first, a homeowners association, that is what we're focusing on next, is a non-profit organisation that oversees the upkeep of a neighbourhood's common areas and establishes general rules and standards for the community. Now, the intention is to protect community assets and establish a code of conduct for owners and residents while instituting proper and sound financial management practices. Now, this morning, here to chat more about the ins and the outs of dealing with the HOAs is Director at Timus Commercial Legal Advisors, Amy Farish, as well as Reba Watson, Property Lawyer and Director of Watson Attorneys. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome back. So much to talk about. We've had interesting discussions around, experiences with neighbours, but if you own or rent in a specific community, you want to feel that you are protected, that somebody has your back, and that's where the Homeowners Association comes into play. What are the benefits, let's start there, of having an HOA?
So I think naturally one of the benefits of firstly living in an estate is the security of it. So having a big fence around the estate, having security guards, access control, all of that, and that's all run and managed by the HOA. So the HOA will also manage things like gardening and maintenance of common areas like the roads and making sure that people abide by speed restrictions and that sort of thing. So there's definitely benefits with the amount of regulation that goes into the Homeowners Association. And also if you're living outside of an estate, there's always neighbour disputes. Here you actually have someone like you can pass the buck to and has to deal with the complaints going forward.
Yeah.
So I definitely say those
so
are
it's not
benefits.
only Homeowners Association, not only for particularly estates like you've mentioned, it's those areas. Like for instance, I live in a crescent, and I know that it's got a larger, for the area, it's got a Homeowners Association and that you can go to, but this also complies with the building that you're doing. If you want to add something to your house or anything like that, that is what you have to contact them first, right?
Yeah, basically they put in all your rules and regulations on how everybody in that area is going to operate. So basically if you're buying into a property in a homeowners association, you're agreeing that you're going to live in that community, you're agreeing to live by those rules.
Yeah.
Which generally you're given to read beforehand.
Yeah, and as a potential homeowner or something renting there, it's in your best interest to understand exactly what is set out in those lists of rules as well. What happens if homeowners fail to comply with the rules set out by HOA? What can happen?
Yes, so generally it always starts with a notice. So you're not going to be slapped with a fine right off the bat. So there'll be an engagement, they'll ask the homeowner for their representations, and then if the homeowner doesn't comply or still doesn't comply after you've given them a notice, then you see more stringent penalties being inflicted, things like fines. Or if, for example, a homeowner has used an amenity like a swimming pool in an improper way, they might be restricted from use of that swimming pool, and even going so far as restricting their voting rights at members' meetings if they still don't comply.
All right. So when it comes to those issues, those disputes, whether it be maybe noisy neighbours or anything like that, how is it typically resolved? I know that there's that, like you said, that first warning kind of thing going out, but what is the end game here? How does it work?
So generally how those sorts of noise disputes would start is a complaint by one neighbour about the other neighbour playing their music too loud or their dogs barking all the time or something like that. And then the complaint would go to the Homeowners Association or the managing agent. A lot of these associations have managing agents in place. They then give notice, give representations, and then they take the next step. It's all generally set out in the Constitution or in the MOI of the non-profit company, like you were talking about earlier. If it goes so far as the neighbour is not satisfied with the way that the HOA is dealing with this noise dispute, they can go to the Community Scheme Ombud Service, which is an organisation that's set up to regulate these sorts of community schemes, including things like body corporates, and they can make an order as to whether or not the HOA did carry out their functions correctly in penalising the defaulting neighbour.
And I mean, there is so much that goes on in a community as well. What are some of the more common issues that you guys have seen that HOA needs to step in and deal with? I mean, I know we're talking about those noisy neighbours and so, but I mean, there's a multitude of other issues that can arise from a community.
You were talking earlier about guidelines on what to build and how to build and getting the consent to build what you want to do. Some people just go ahead and do whatever they like. So some I've represented a homeowners association where a particular homeowner put in a huge sculpture of an eagle that didn't really actually apply to any of the guidelines or anything, and he refused to take it down or anything. So in that instance, we had to go all the way through to, that's why it got to us, is because we had to go and litigate on it. But yeah, so that's...
Yeah. Other instances are animals. So dogs barking is a massive thing. And homeowners homeowners associations can go so far if the owner doesn't control their pet to require that they actually remove the animal from the association. And for a lot of us, our pets are like our babies. So that's a massive penalty to be imposed, but they are able to do it if it says they can in the rules.
Yeah, I was just thinking now about the building as well, because I mean, it's one thing to get your plans and stuff approved, but with regards to homeowners association, you need their consent, you need the neighbours' consent. There's so much that goes into it. Otherwise, you might be slapping or sitting with an issue where you need to start applying for a rezoning, which is a huge issue as well. So best to do it right from the get-go. We're going to be back in just a little bit. Stick around as we unpack the Homeowners Association and what they can do for you and how you need to go dealing with those disputes if you want to get in touch with your HOA.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. You're tuned into your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso right here on S3, and we are back with Amy Farish along with Reva Watson as we continue to delve into the world of homeowners associations and how much control they have over the properties that they oversee. Now, homeowners associations are significant contributors to the well-being of communities, but can also come with their own challenges. And before we delve into the discussion, we had a voice note from Pauline this morning. Let's quickly take a listen.
Good morning, Expresso. Wanted to know, what is the law with subletting, and if the law states 20 people in a flat and not being on a lease, how does that work?
All right, so subletting rule states 20 people. What's your take on that?
So I think if I understand it correctly, if she's talking about in a homeowners association environment, generally your rules in your homeowners association would say that subletting is permitted, provided that, and often not always, the homeowners association has an opportunity to sort of vet your tenant. So do things like criminal checks, and because as an owner of another property or staying within the homeowners association, you want to make sure that whoever's coming in is not a criminal, for example. So that sort of thing is generally always dealt with in your rules. In your lease agreement, you would have to then get your landlord's consent to obviously sublet your apartment or your property within the homeowners association as well, on top of the homeowners association consent.
All right, so make sure before you enter in any of those agreements, make sure you know exactly the ins and outs of what you are allowed to do. All right, just to safeguard yourself, because you don't want to get into a sticky situation. Back to the HOA, the Homeowners Association, what are the specific rights and protections for homeowners within the HOA community?
So more generally speaking, the homeowner obviously has rights in terms of law. So things like the Constitution, rights to privacy, rights to equality, so equal treatment compared to all other homeowners, rights to dignity as well. But one of the main rights that homeowners have in this specific situation when they live in estates are your voting rights, where you have voting rights to vote on matters like changes to the rules and the Constitution and things like that. And we always urge homeowners, attend the meetings, vote. Because if you don't vote and if you don't attend the meetings, it becomes very difficult to complain somewhere down the line where it's something you could have actually had a say on.
It has been put out for you already.
Exactly, yeah. So I'd say definitely the strongest right is your voting rights in that situation.
And look, we know that homeowner associations, I mean, it's a group of people that come together and they foresee, obviously, for the better of the community, but are there limitations to what they can actually afford to use?
So the Homeowners Association can't take the law into their own hands. They are still governed by legislation, and if you're talking about neighbours and nuisance and noise disturbances, etc., they will have to follow the right procedures in terms of what the bylaws may be or the regulations may be, etc. But essentially what your homeowners association is taking a homeowner, giving them a bit of protection, so that the homeowner goes to the homeowners association. The homeowners association then escalates it higher and higher. So it's just a little bit of insulation, call it, from having to deal with it all yourself.
Yeah, it's almost like helping to deal with it internally first if there's an issue.
Absolutely. So they sort of, the conduct rules that we've been talking about, etc., those are the rules that we're like, okay, this is what we're all agreeing to. Okay, you're now not agreeing to it. This is now illegal. So we are going to take the steps in terms of our law that we are entitled to do, and then the homeowners association and the managing agents, etc., should assist the homeowner with taking those steps so that it can be escalated properly. Not
All right. So Amy, let's put it into a real-world situation. If I have an issue with something with regards to my community, how does it work? Walk us through. How does the disputes being settled? What's my first point of call? How do I even go about it?
So I think you have to take a practical approach from the get-go as well, because it is neighbours that you're dealing with, so you are going to have to live next door to them for quite some time. So you have to think, is it serious enough for me to actually go so far as to complain to the HOA? If it is serious enough, then you lodge a complaint in writing with the HOA, stating exactly what the problem is. Backing it up with evidence is always best, because then the HOA has all the facts at hand. Then the HOA sort of runs with the process, and they should always keep you informed. So it should always be a consultation process between the HOA, you, and the third party. You can, of course, request that your complaints are kept confidential, but naturally some people can assume who's actually complaining, yes. And then the HOA will run through the process going forward and fine the person or restrict their access to certain amenities or restrict their voting rights.
Yeah. Just a quick one, Riva. Should you feel as a homeowner that the HOA is not acting in accordance to their own guidelines, not all HOAs function, 100% well, what do you then stand to do? Where do you go?
Yeah, not all HOAs are created equal.
Yeah.
The base, we talked earlier about CSOS, which is the ombud for sectional title schemes and homeowners associations. That is basically the ombud that oversees these communities. So if you have a problem, they're like the police of the homeowners association. So if your homeowners association is not doing what they are supposed to be doing, that's where you report the homeowners association and call the homeowners association to book. That's not necessarily where you would lodge your complaint against somebody in particular. It's usually saying, hey, I've lodged the complaint, the homeowners association is doing nothing, please can you call the homeowners association to book?
All right, so there are ways that you are protected even outside of the HOA, which is great. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, ladies. I mean, this is a lot. This is a lot, but I think it's best that as a homeowner or somebody living in a community that you know exactly who to go, where to go, who your homeowners association is, and what you stand to do as well, and what your rights are as a homeowner.